Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
So, sir, this is about your CWC meet, which took place this earlier this week. So, do you think the outcome will help India get a strong opposition it so needs?
Well, I think so. I mean, only difference I had was that this is something that you should have come to with these problems to the Congress president and sat down and talked to her and resolved it. That was my opinion. Everyone has their own opinions. Everyone disagrees or agrees with the issue, but that was the place to go rather than go out into the press. That one side we want to maintain discipline in the states, and we want to see that the party remains a cohesive force. And then on top of that, if at the CWC level and at the right of the helm of the affairs of the party, you start having the division, then how do I maintain discipline, or the Congress PCC president maintain discipline in Punjab? So these are all the things that I think they may have had their issues, they may have had problems, they could have sat and discussed it.
Yes, sir. So do you think, sir, you've moved forward as in that, in the sense that some issues that were flagged? So has there been any movement on that?
No, there were not issues that, that particular day, it was primarily on this letter that had been written. So there was nothing else discussed. But yes, today we have the 7 chief ministers have discussed various issues. The Pondicherry people had their own problem. Mamta ji had her own. Thackeray ji had his own. Hemant has his own in Jharkhand, and all the Congress chief ministers had their own. So, our problems are different. My problem is education. My problem is SCs, for instance. I've got the highest population of SCs in the country, 32%. And they've suddenly cut off their post-metric scholarships. And they say, it costs the government of India to pay 720 crores a year for the SC scholarships. And then they suddenly say that, all right, up to 800 you pay, and beyond 800 if it goes, we will pay. Why should we pay? That's something that's been going on forever. And why have we gone and cut it off? And where will that 32% of Punjab is 1/3 of Punjab? Where do my children go to school, college and schools? I don't know. These are funny things that are happening in Delhi. And that's why I have suggested, and I think all of them have agreed, number one, on the higher education issue, that we should all go together to the Supreme Court in a review petition. And on other issues that are affecting us, we should jointly all go and see the Prime Minister. I hope he gives us the time.
All right, sir. That's quite a bit. And so now Liz Matthew would like to ask a question.
Yes, of course.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, we have seen Congress spokespersons, from the party forum defending Prashant Bhushan in expressing his views and freedom of expression. But in the Congress, when the party, some leaders, after a crisis, we all have seen it as a crisis in the Congress, the leadership crisis. After waiting for so many years, when they raised some concerns, it was a letter and which was leaked. And, many Congress leaders very senior Congress leaders also had expressed their anger towards those people who have put their differences or their concerns on paper. So what is this double stand?
No double standard. Put it on paper, but send it to the Congress president and let her deal with it. Otherwise, there's no anger in that sense that anyone differs with what they say in the letter. People may have their own opinions, but that is for them to go to the Congress president and sit with her and say, ma'am, this is what we think here, or this is what we think there, and whatever the issues are. That is the only feeling which is there amongst the...
There were two things here. One, some Congress leaders said, how can you write such letter to Sonia Gandhi? One. Second, also it was, they tried to, we have read from the report that they tried to raise this matter several times earlier also, but it was not addressed properly. That is why they had written that letter.
No, that I've come in the first category. But as far as the second, this is concerned, I mean, nobody could say that. How can Mrs. Gandhi say I'm not going to meet 12 or 20 or 23 of people who are my senior leaders of the party? She will never say that. I don't believe that. I think if they had written to her or to Rahul or whoever, and or to both of them, and said we want to sit with you and discuss these points, and send a list of points, or say we want to discuss with you. Nobody asks you to send a list. You can sit there and discuss your points. I mean, if I go to see, forget my own party, but if I go to see even the current government, I always say that I want to come and see you. And they say, come and see you, and then you discuss your points there. So similarly, in our own party, we do the same thing. And I don't think there is any such feeling of that. I only felt, as I've said, I'm in the first category, we are not angry. We only feel that there is a certain decorum. And all the time, I'll tell you a story. Once, many years ago, I was a young MP. I had come to Parliament for the first time, it was 1980. And I wrote some statement. I gave a little thing in some paper about it. I didn't agree with the Chief Minister of Punjab at that time. And Mrs. Gandhi, that time, late Mrs. Gandhi was Prime Minister. So at midday, I got a message in the Central Hall of Parliament that the PM wanted to see me. So I went there. And she said, did you write this? So I said, yes, I did, ma'am. Why did you write it? I said, because that's what I felt. She said, you know, that who has made the Chief Minister? I said, you have. She said, then don't you think that you are writing against my decisions? So I said, that's not the point. This is what I felt. She said, no, he's been made by me. And if you have any problem, you can tell the Chief Minister or tell me, I'll deal with it. But don't go like this and put it into the papers. I think then also, like now, it was Indian Express. So there you are. Even then, it was a little thing in the Indian Express from Chandigarh. That time I remember. So these are things that happen. I mean, I don't think people should carry them there. How can you maintain discipline? Not me. I'm the Chief Minister. I'm looking after government. But I've got Sunil Jakhar, who's my PCC president. He has to maintain discipline in the party. What will my partymen be thinking? My junior people who are the Youth Congress or junior members of the Congress party. If we say maintain discipline and there this is happening at that level, it's not good. You can't hold it. They'll turn around and say, what's happening in Delhi?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Harish? So Harish from Delhi, Harish Damodran. He's our senior editor.
Your government had come out with this scheme on, Pani Bachao, Paise Kamao, this kind of a scheme, basically to save water. And also, I think probably, what is the progress of that scheme? And also, how do you wean the Punjab farmer away from paddy? Because I think in 1 or 2 months from now, again, we'll have the same problem of stubble burning, etc. What exactly, do you have a game plan yet, including on, this thing of free electricity, which again, I think is taking away a lot of your revenues, right? I mean, your GST problems, I mean, there are many kind of things. How do you plan to address this, in a way which also, sort of takes care of, the concerns which farmers have? Thank you.
Well, what we did first was on this Pani Bachao, Paise Bachao, Pani Bachao, we put meters on every house, on tube wells and all, and we checked back what the consumption was. And we had fixed a rate, a consumption, that how much paddy requires and how much other crop requires. And if anybody saved that money and you didn't reach, say, figure 3,000, you never reached figure 3,000, you reached figure 2,200, well, we gave him 800 rupees. And we said, that we encouraged him in that sense. And that is where we saved water. It may not be money, but certainly we saved water. And that is our critical thing. As you're asking me, what do we do with this? Only way is diversification. Paddy is not, I remember when I left the army in 1969 and I came home and I saw the agriculture, nobody grew paddy. Nobody knew what paddy was. 1966, 1967, they started the research in the Philippines, rices, and by 1968, by 1970, in 1 year, the whole of Punjab was growing paddy. Now, that has drawn our water. Today, we have two problems. One, your glacier melt, your greenhouse effect, and glaciers are melting disastrously. I went back to this area where I was first posted as a young officer in Lahul Spiti, which is now the Chinese are claiming, the Korik Pass I was posted on. And I was there for 2 years. And we had the Korik and the Shipti, which both Chinese are claiming. And there were glaciers you couldn't climb with ammunition boots. You couldn't climb because it was hard ice, thick glaciers. I don't think anyone ever went up there. A few years ago, I went on a trip. There's no glacier. It's all gone. And this is the situation. If you go into this, an organization which is run by Government of India called the SASE, Snow and Avalanche Study Establishment, both in Manali, and they've got one here in Mohali also, you will see that glaciers are just going. And as a consequence, river waters are falling. I mean, if in Iradi they said it was 71 million acre feet of water in these 2-3 rivers. Well, it's down to now about 13. And that's what we assume, because every 25 years you're supposed to have a check, but we haven't had it for the last, since Iradi came in 40 years ago. That is what we are asking the Supreme Court. Before you, or the Ministry of Water or Jal Shakti, that before you go in for deciding what water, then for God's sake, let's find out what water exists. How do you divide something which doesn't exist? So that is one of the things. Second is, as a consequence of water not being available from the rivers, people are overpumping. I can tell you in Patiala, when I remember when I came back, as I said, from the army, it was about 30 feet of water. And now your depth is 350 feet. How far are you going to go? And 70% of my farmers are below 5 acres of land. Can they put a tube well 400 feet down and a huge motor? Where will they pay for it? There's no way they can pay for the motor, and there's no way they can pay for that much electricity. So we are going to suffer both ways. Diversification is the answer. And because I'm also pushing hard for industry to come in so that, a lot of youngsters who land fragmentation is taking place can find jobs. But apart from that, in diversification, we have been a bit successful so far. This year, we've got 1 lakh acres more of cotton. So cotton is going in. And the second thing is that we are trying to convert most of our paddy growing areas into basmati growing areas for 2 reasons. One, it consumes less water. And secondly, it doesn't require an MSP, because I don't know what these people are going to do. We are making a big noise about these ordinances that they passed, and which will make a bill, and they do away with the FCI and they do away with the price support system. Then I don't know where we go. So at least basmati is all got an established market, which is overseas. So they can do that, and cotton has an established market. So hopefully we will be able to do that. Otherwise, we are going to be in trouble, like everyone else who has to rely on these rivers and all. Now, that is what so far, on the situation is.
Yes, sir. And so this SYL issue, it's cropped up again. So and there is one thinking that there isn't enough water to give, and both Haryana and Punjab know that, but it's become an emotive issue, a political issue.
This is exactly what I was saying, Manoj. Today, your river waters have fallen. So we are saying that you are assuming that from 71 in the Iradi Commission, 40 years ago, you are now down to 13 point something. So you are down by, a substantial amount of water, but that's what you assume. Why can't you do a proper check? Get your water experts, form a committee, sit down and work out what the water is. That is the first part of it. And then you can go ahead and say, I've told you about the groundwater situation. But what people are not understanding is another very important issue. Look, when Punjab and Haryana were formed in 1966, every asset of Punjab was broken up into 60-40 ratio. We kept 60% because we were a larger state, and Haryana was smaller, they got 40%. Your personnel, your IS officers, your IPS officers, your police battalions, your offices, your Vidhan Sabha was divided into 2, your secretariat was divided into 2. Everything was divided on that basis and given, except water. Now that's the interesting part. That you put Ravi, Beas and Satluj into the pool to decide, but what happened to my Yamuna water, which existed from the Tajewala headworks? which is part of Punjab, erstwhile Punjab. Punjab went right up to Delhi, up to the Jamna. So what about the Jamna, the water which was coming 5 point something million acre feet from there, usko Haryana ko de diya. Now they are 80 lakh acres of land and we are 105 lakh acres of land. As of today, their water is more than ours. And now they have got a further commitment of 1 million acre feet from the Sharda Yamuna link canal. So if you add up the water which they have got at a much smaller agricultural land than ours, which is 80 lakh acres of theirs and 105 lakh acres of ours, today they've got more and they're with additional coming from the Sharda Yamuna. So is it fair for them to ask from us? When the river waters don't exist, when your subsoil water is going down, this is what we've been trying to make them understand from time to time. But again, as you say, they just say, it's decree ho gayi hai ji, decree ko hum ye kar denge, wo kar denge, kya karoge? You know what will happen? I'll tell you. Shall I tell you what will happen? It'll be again Punjab will go under weaponry and guns and business. Pakistan is waiting for an opportunity, and you have got people here. 70% of my farmers are less than 5 acres who can't survive. With difficulty they survive. Out of these, about 40% are less than 2 acres. They will become available to this propaganda which is coming from across Pakistan. I have in the last 2 years caught about 140 terrorists coming from there, apart from these own gangsters and all who link up with them in Punjab, our own people. We have got nearly 2,000 weapons we have collected. All that is with us. And that information is there from the gangsters and from Pakistan, all this. We have got, today they've got a new system of sending them across, they send them across by drones. Previously they used to swim the river. Even in the middle of this season, in this monsoon season, last year we caught a man with 8 weapons on his back, with some tires and all to float on and coming through over the Ravi. Now they are desperate. They pick up these poor people as they do in Kashmir, and they pay them, this ISI pays them a whole lot of money and pushes them for doing this sort of thing. Now here is a problem when you come to this situation where you get something which is there. Why did I do that Termination of Agreement Act in my last government? It was for the same reason, that we knew, because we got an order that by Monday, this issue has to be handed over to the CPWD. And I knew that we would go back to the bad old days. And that is why I had to take that decision. There's no other reason for doing it. I don't want my Punjab to burn again. We've had enough trouble. We've had trouble before 84. We've had trouble after 84. We've had in the 90s till they assassinated our Chief Minister, Sarbyan Singh. And this thing would rise again. They need an issue. You've got the Six for Justice, this crackpot in America who makes this noise all the time. And that's sort of those sort of people there who are doing this sort of thing, and just and who are they fronting? They are fronting the ISI. Who's paying for Mr. Pannu's going on there? All the ISI, and they are happy to do this. They don't care a damn. They just want to make money. That's all, and that's what he's doing. So the point is that we have to avoid any situation which can lead to trouble here. That is why I told the chief ministers that day. Mr. Khattar was there. Happily, I was not there because all 3 chief ministers, the chief minister of Haryana, and his minister of state, all 3 have got corona. Had I been there, I would have been the 4th down with it. So I did it on this Facebook business. And but there it is. I told them, I said, it is not going to be my problem. 50% of Haryana are Sikhs also. 20% of your northern belt of Rajasthan is also Sikhs. So don't only think that Punjab is going to be in trouble. You are going to be in trouble too if this trouble starts again. मैं तो कह आया हूँ, देखते हैं अब क्या करते हैं.
Yes, sir. So Shubhajit Roy from Delhi would like to ask a question.
Yeah.
So you are a military historian, and you've written extensively on Kargil. Now you said that you're working on a book on India, China as well. We are now more than 3 months now into this border standoff with China. And so what is the difference and what are the similarities that you see when you compare this border standoff with China, with Kargil? And how do you assess the response of this government? Are there any differences? Are there any similarities?
No, Kargil was a different issue altogether. It was a misconception of President Zia. He actually was um, a chap who'd been through the military operations right from lieutenant colonel to brigadier and on the top, and he had conceived something in his idea, which he thought he could take the heights of Kargil and interdict all the communication to Leh. And this other road to Leh via Rohtang and this area only works for a couple of months in the year. The rest of your line of communication is all on this. I think it's called Highway 22, if I remember correctly, which goes to Kargil. So he will say, he thought he could take the hills, and that India would say, please, ab haath milao hamare se. But I mean, that was a complete I'm surprised how. I think this military has been in Pakistan in handling the governments more than they handle their own military knowledge. And he has made a complete blunder in his own thinking. And straight away, India responded and we pushed them off the hills. And sad that we lost a lot of people, but we did it very professionally. And they had to suffer the consequences. Do you know their communications are so bad that when some of their soldiers who were in the post-mortem stage, when they cut their stomachs open, they found that they had been eating mud and grass to survive. They had no rations left. So it was bad planning on their part altogether. In China's case, it's something else. If you look at China's history, firstly, they couldn't care a damn about human life. In the Great March, 75 million people died under Mao's leadership. And then in the Cultural Revolution, another 3 million people died. And in the purges, subsequently, about 1 million people died. So human life doesn't really matter to them. They have a concept of them for 100 years since the Opium Wars took place, that it's 100 years of humiliation, they call it. That is the word they use, 100 years of humiliation. And they have made out a plan for retaking areas which they lost over the couple of centuries, let's put it. Interestingly, one of your Chinese journalists has written a book saying that the next 6 wars that China is going to fight. And this is from China, a journalist, I forget her name, it's a lady, and she's, in Peking, nothing goes out without government's approval. So it was testing the waters or what they were trying to do. But we are very much on number 2 on the list. Taiwan is number 1 on the list. And they are going as far back as demanding areas that Russia had taken from them. So, it's and what they call us is Southern Tibet area. And now they have got a new military system in place since 1916, which is, there were 7 military districts. Now they've cut it down to 4 commands. We are in the southern, in the Western command of theirs. Southwestern Command, and other commands are for various other areas. But they have also a strategic command, and they also have a rocket command. Now, a whole command of only rocket-based, establishments. And similarly, in the strategic is nuclear-based. So that is the scenario today. So now they are flexing their muscles. And I think they have this business of their coming to Galwan. This is not the first time. In 1962, they came to Galwan. Galwan and Hot Springs were held by 5 Jat. And I remember Major Husbandis was taken prisoner. He was wounded and taken prisoner. He was holding a company at Galwan. And in Hot Springs, there was a Major Ajit Singh, who was also 5 Jats. And he had to withdraw. And this came into a perimeter. Brigadier Raina, who was our former chief, he was commanding that brigade then. And they came back, and then you had 1-8 Gurkhas holding the frontal area of Chushul, and the Jats coming in, and the 13 Kumaus at Razangla. So that battle took place, and it was a pitched battle. There were a lot of casualties. Chinese suffered very heavily also there. In the Eastern Theater, we didn't do too well because I'm afraid leadership was bad on our part, and you put in a division. In fact, when I joined the army, I joined that same division. They had come back from that area of Namkachu, and then they'd come down up to Sela, and from Sela to Bamdila, and that area and all that area where they lost. In fact, I am the 62 Brigade, which is commanding Sela, was my old deputy commandant from the NDA, Brigadier Hushar Singh. He was killed there. So that was a completely mismanaged affair by General Kaul and by General Mahavir Prasad, what's his name, Naranjan Prasad. And really what they did was they brought in, brigade commanders who were commanding those brigades for 2 years. They took them out and brought in new brigade commanders and put them in who were on the verge of retirement, but they had big medals on their shoulders and they thought that these guys will hold the show, and it really became bad. As far as the troops were concerned, troops of first class. Troops had no ammunition. They had the old guns, the 303 rifles of the Second World War vintage. They had no artillery support. They had just one battery of 17 Parafield, which was holding, which never got a shot off. They had a battery of heavy mortars, which had no bombs. The bombs hadn't arrived from Delhi or wherever they were supposed to arrive from. There was no medical equipment. There was no food. There was one, you were fighting at areas between 9,000 and 12 and 13,000 feet. Even in autumn, it gets very cold. The men had only one jersey. They had one blanket each, and two of them used to huddle onto one blanket on the ground and one on top of them. And that's how they kept warm. And the second Rajputs, for instance, last 3 days before the war took place, they had no food. They had just rice and atta and salt, and that's what they used. And they had no tea, just tea leaves, no milk. And they could just take tea and put some salt in it or just drink it without anything. Now, that was a scenario that you developed then. Today, that is not the scenario. And if the Chinese think that they're going to get away with what they're trying to do, as long as I'm sure our military establishment knows exactly what they have and what we have and how we can match them. But the fact remains that we are in a much, much, much better position. I mean, where there was one brigade, 114 brigade in Trishul, now we have a whole corps there, which is nearly 10 brigades. And Galwan has got a brigade, Daulat Beg Oldi has got a brigade. All these areas are fully established, and all along their border. It's not even 4 Corps and 33 Corps, which are in the south, in the Sikkim and the Arunachal area. They are all holding their own position. So the Chinese are going to be very foolish if they think they can do it. They've had a bloody nose in 1967 when General Sagat blew the hell out of them at the Nathula area. And I think you'll get a second time, they'll get a bloody nose if they try here. That business of the Galwan little fracas which took place should never have happened, provided the command had given its orders. I am sure by now they don't. How can you had a Doklam, and after Doklam, you know that they are becoming aggressive. And at that stage, you still have an order in place which was issued in 93 that you don't carry weapons or you don't use your weapons. Then what are you carrying them if you're using them, if you carry them? And on the other hand, if you got an aggressive enemy, why aren't you carrying them? I mean, I was on the Chinese border for 2 years. We never went out on patrol till we were fully armed. You have to, the way it was done. And eventually you found these boys of 3rd Punjab or the other place, the way they fought and what they did there. There was 3rd Mountain Medium Regiment. There was 3rd Punjab, 16 Bihar, and another, I think 13 Bihar, some men from there. They fought very well. They had nothing in their hands. They picked up stones, and finally they snatched the clubs from the Chinese and used those against the Chinese. I've got one of my boys who was killed from Mansa, Gurtej. He was a 23-year-old boy from their commando platoon, Gataks they call them now, a commando platoon who killed 12 men single-handed, without anything in his hands. It was just whatever he could pick up. And eventually he was stabbed in the back and killed. So these are the sort of, our boys are in very good shape. That's not it. It has to be the leadership that has to be effective enough now. And I'm sure now I think they will be on their toes. They've got a good army commander, General Joshi. He commanded his regiment with great distinction in Kargil, 13 Jack rifles, in which there were 2 Paramveer Chakras. So, you know, that is Vikram Batra and Sanjay Singh. These are the two boys who got the PVC there. So he was a very distinguished commander. He's now the Northern Army commander. He's, I'm sure, looking into this, and so is the Army Chief and General Rawat.
Yes, sir. So Manoj CG from Delhi would also like to ask one question.
Good evening, Captain Saab.
Evening, evening, Ji.
Sir, coming back to the developments in the Congress, you said the objectionable part was that these 23 leaders wrote the letter and the letter made its way to the media. But even in the CWC, which is the highest body of the Congress, the ideal body to discuss such matters, the contents of the letters were never discussed by all accounts. Instead, the motive, the timing, the intent, all those were questioned. So why was the letter not circulated? You could have discussed the suggestions, threadbare over 7 hours, accepted fully or rejected. Why did that happen? Why did the letter never came up for discussion?
You know, the point is, it's very simple. The letter appeared in the morning. I opened it, I saw in your paper, and I saw all the pictures on everything. It's your story, actually, your story. But anyway, I saw all the pictures there, and the very next day it was called. So we didn't even know what the contents were fully, and I don't think anyone had the contents like that. Now, once it certainly comes up, you don't have to discuss it the very next day. First day is to resolve the current issue, which was to see that normalcy returned in every way, and everyone, of course, came into the and endorsed what everyone else wanted and into our leadership matter. And now those issues which have been raised there, I'm sure they will come up in the next meeting. And I'm sure they're already being discussed at the Congress President's level.
So, sir, without knowing the contents of the letter over 7 hours, the 50-odd members tried it.
It was that there should be a leadership. There should be a strong leadership. And that is what everyone said. Yes, we are all for a strong leadership. Eventually, even they said it. We are fully endorsed the Congress President. The question was whether the Congress President will continue or not. And everyone said that she must, and she accepted that. You know Sonia Ji's what she's like. Once she gets into it, this is her. What is it? I've known her since I came into. She made me a Congress President in 1998 or 1999, something like that. And I've been working very closely with her. She's a very perceptive person. And I think there's no question that she wouldn't want to deal with these issues. I'm sure she will deal with these issues when it comes. It's a question of timing. It can't come that I pick up the Indian Express today and see the pictures, and then next day we discuss the whole issue without people knowing what they're discussing. The issue is first stabilize everything and then go in for discussing.
Yes, sir. Krishan Kaushik from Delhi.
I'll ask a question related to what Shubhajit had asked about China. So you mentioned about the China's 100 years of humiliation. Now they're flexing their muscles, and India is one of the wars that they mentioned. The journalist mentions. So what can India do to be prepared itself for the war that is, like, as you say, could be looming? And second, in the current scenario, Chinese troops continue to be in at least 3 areas of the Indian side of the LAC. Do you think it was the fault of the military, the intelligence, the political leadership, or all of them together that this situation has come to this now?
Well, normally, look, these things should be known both in the diplomatic channels and in the intelligence channels, and the government should have been informed accordingly. But the fact is that it's taken place, and it's now for the government to resolve it. I'm not for war. I don't think anyone. I don't think any of you are for any of you are for war. Any of you are for war either. Can we settle it? I'm sure all of you are. None of us are for the war. But the fact is, we must be prepared. The old saying, "If you want peace, then prepare for war." I think this is what we have to do. We have to see that we are secure, because it's a weak nation that strong nations try to take advantage of. And we are not a weak nation. We have got a good army now. We've got a good military. We've got a good air force. We may be short of some aircraft. We'll get some more aircraft. Our navy is established. Look at us. We are being surrounded by them. The whole of the north, they are there. Here on the western front, Pakistan, and they are great allies. You've got the Karakoram highway coming. They've given them a port in Gwadar. They've got a port. The Chinese Navy is now operating in the Indian Ocean, and the whole of the northern belt. They are demanding things from in the Aksai Chin area. They're already holding. Then the rest of the Shaksgam Valley, Pakistan has given it to them, and you are holding the Chinese border right through. And then you're demanding things of Himachal Pradesh areas from them. Then you're demanding Uttarakhand from them. Then you go to far Sikkim. You're demanding. Then you go to Arunachal. When is this going to stop? I mean, this has to stop. And I think the only way that'll put a stop to it is if they think that we can deal with them effectively, militarily also. Therefore, our military has to be strong, and that is the duty of the government to do. I think the government must give its priorities. For instance, 2 corps were required for the mountains, 2 strike corps for the mountains. Why weren't they built? 1 was removed. Now, where is the 2nd corps? 2nd corps, they've got 1 division ready, and that's also still in the raising stage. When will you have a corps ready for this? This was meant for this. The object wasn't that we should milk out units from, milk out formations from other commands and send them to block the areas in Ladakh or somewhere else. Those strike corps were meant for this task. And this has been talked about for so long. Why couldn't they just, okay, it costs us 70,000 crores, then give 70,000 crores. That's the priority for the nation. I think that should have been done. But here, only 1 division they have ordered raising off, and that also is not complete. So I think these are things that the government must wake up on this.
So I have a follow-up question on that actually. So like, you mentioned all this military, this whatever was required has not been done till now. But along with that, over the years, China has developed its infrastructure on their side of the LAC much better than we have. Yes. So, I mean, and that's a historical thing, which is not just like in the past 5 years or 10 or 15 years. We have never been able to develop that. So what can we do?
I'll tell you why. Because we are a very steep mountainous terrain. They have got the Tibetan Plateau. So it's easier for them to bring their trains and their roads and all right up to the border. It's not easy for us. I mean, from here to, let's say, my old area, Korik, it's just 1 road. And if that road is, it probably has about 50 bridges. You go 10 bridges and your communications are cut. So, this is something that, of course, government must wake up and see alternative areas. Now, Rohtang is through. I think by next month it should be through. So we have a all-weather road going to Leh also. So you don't have to come through Kashmir Valley and up this way. You can go straight through the old road by going under the Rohtang Pass. So these are sort of communication things which do take time, number 1. Secondly, resources. Resources, of course, government has to find ways and means of finding them. The Chinese have them. Their economy is booming and they have whatever they require. So we have to also now find alternatives for our side.
Sunny Verma from Delhi.
Sir, good evening.
Good evening, Ji.
Sir, much of the onus of moving away from China, much of the onus of recovery and revival in the economy will be also on the states because they are at the front line to deal with the economic adversities posed by the pandemic. What is the Punjab's game plan in that sense? Do you have the resources and do you sort of agree with the center's approach in this matter?
I don't agree 1% with the center's approach. Let me tell you. Firstly, we have had to shut down in March. Everything is shut down. When, every aspect of it. Now, our industry, for instance, Ludhiana, let me tell you, we have about 134,000 industrial units, and they were down to 0. And we have got them back working. And we've got about 16 lakh people now, workers who've come in back again from Bihar and Jharkhand and wherever they come from to the places. So we are moving now forward on that score. Unfortunately, we have got no support from the government of India to fight COVID, number 1. That is our main emphasis. I was just talking, so I can give you those figures also. Where are those figures? Yes, we were discussing this issue with the chief ministers a little while ago. Now, with the COVID being your main emphasis and to resolve in the state, you need resources. Government of India has given us 101 crores till now. I've spent 500 crores and I don't have the money. I don't have the money because I have my own resources have come to a complete halt. I am going to end up this. I can give you some other figures also. I'll come back to the first one first. Where are these? Anyway, what has happened is that here's the COVID figures. Yes, the COVID figures are. It's got 44,577. Now this doesn't sound so much compared to other states, but we are a state which is just 2% of India. So for me, that's a lot of figures. And I yesterday got 1,293 cases. And I've lost 49 people yesterday. And total, I've lost 1,178. And my peak is still to come. We are on the way up. And we are expecting that we'll have a peak by middle to end of September. And then our team of doctors, which is guiding us, are predicting that by middle of September, this figure of 44,000 will go to 1,10,000. And the casualties in deaths, which are 1,178, will cross 3,000. Now that is for me to deal with first. And I need resources for it. Now, I don't have resources. I have everything shut here, which was giving us money. And now I find a strange thing which has come today, that even GST they're not going to give. I haven't received GST since March. My two tranches of since then have not come to me. And I've just got this news that the Attorney General has given an opinion. There is no obligation on the central government to pay the GST compensation shortfall to the states. And GST Council has to decide on ways to make good the shortfall in compensation funds. Now, all our taxation was taken over by the government of India for GST and promised to us through GST. And now they're saying we can't give you because we don't have the money, so we can't give it to you. Just now, the Pondicherry Chief Minister was part of the meeting yesterday, which took place with Sitaraman. And my finance minister had also gone there. And he was telling us on the video that she just said, I don't have the money. But if you don't have the money, then where are we to get the money from? Because you have to give us the money. We give you the powers to tax us, and your job was to give so much percentage to us. But you don't want to give us that also. So I don't have money on my own. I can't get money from them. All my figures are negative. All the ones that are revenues coming in, because things are picking up. They don't take off overnight. They take a little time in coming together. And, we are going through passing, and this was the feeling of Mamta, this was the feeling of Thackeray, this was the feeling of Hemant from Jharkhand, this was the feeling of all my 4 colleagues from the Congress party, everyone there. So we decided that if that is the answer, then let's all collectively go and see the Prime Minister and tell him this is the problem, then give us our money. We are not asking for your money, we are asking for our own money back. So we are going to have a big problem in this. It's not going to be an easy thing. If my crisis develops the way it is developing and is developing the rest of India, this is the first. From urban areas, we are shifting to rural areas now, this COVID movement. And I think it is time for us to now sit with them and seriously talk to them and see what has to be done. And for other things like education and all, how can you tell me the UGC is not allowing me to postpone the exams or to pass children like I've done up to the 10th by promoting them all who have done well in their pre-exam years, and we've just promoted them. So we've asked the same thing to the UGC to do, let the universities decide which student is up to it and promote them to the next class. They said no, they must sit for the exam. How can they sit for an exam when I've got Punjab heading for a crisis? I don't understand sometimes what these governments are doing. I've written twice to the Prime Minister. I've written twice to we have taken it up with all the ministers concerned. We've taken it up with the UGC. I've asked my vice chancellors to go and meet all the UGC people and talk to them. They don't want to listen. And the professional exams. We said you do it online. That's okay. There's NEET one and the other ones. Other ones, which are the college exams and university exams, just promote the people. I know it's not a good thing. people should do their exams, but there are crises and crises, and we are in a warlike situation. So situations have, and the situation has to change, and you have to take decisions accordingly.
Yes. So do there is this fear that there could be another lockdown because the cases are spiking. Is that right?
Sorry?
That we could be heading for another lockdown if the cases continue to.
I put things in place a little bit. Look, we have got enough space available to us in all our sectors. But if things go in such a harsh manner and in such numbers that you are going to exceed whatever the arrangements are, then we have to think of some things. Now, what I have done, we haven't done is like we did earlier on, have a total lockdown. We've done micro containment and containment zones. Micro containment, if one house has got this corona, then 3 houses around it we probably block off. If it's a containment zone, if a mahalla has it, then we cover up the whole mahalla and areas around it a little to some extent. And that is how we are trying to control it and keep it down. I don't want the peak in September to reach 3,000 deaths. And my objective is today to plan in some way and to work in some way with the medical staff and our organization, our administration, to see that we should keep those figures down. Today, it's not a question of spreading, it's a question of preventing deaths.
Right.
I was hearing you speaking to Sonia Gandhi today, where you said that we are going to have a deficit of 25,000 crores by the end of this fiscal. So just wondering, 25,000 crores, yes. So how are we going to keep afloat? Like, do we have money to pay the salaries for the rest of the year? And what about the other things that we need it for?
Let me tell you, this is of all the states. That is why I'm telling you, it's not Punjab only, it's Jharkhand, it's Pondicherry, it's works. Everyone is doing the same thing. And therefore, we decided to go and meet the Prime Minister and tell him that this is the situation. It's going to be there, 25,000 crore is going to be, we are going to be deficit. And in the first quarter, it's 4,800 or something. It's already up to July and the figures have come. And we are going to be in a serious financial situation. We have asked for some things. For instance, the state's gross domestic, GSDP. We have asked from 2%. They have agreed to allow us to borrow, raise that to 4%. But they have put conditions which we cannot meet. So that is what we are trying to say, that remove the conditions. That is possible. Then in the Niti Aayog, we have also asked them that this business that we've got first money which is due to us has arrived, but we've asked it for it to continue for another 4 years. We can't just take the first year's money and think that we can carry on, because this business of recovery is not going to finish soon. I put up a committee, as you know, under Montek Singh Ahluwalia, to work out how we can break out of this system despite COVID and start the economy moving again. And a lot of people are putting in a lot of time to help us out on that. But again, it's going to take time before these things establish. And that's not only me, that is all over the place. But for a finance minister to turn around and say, I don't have the money, then who's going to give us the money? These are the things that I'm worried about. And 25,000 crores is not a small amount. That is what is the preliminary things. But you know how finances go. Suddenly you are told a month before that no, it's not 25, it's gone to 30. So these are unfortunate things that are happening. And it's of deep concern to us, as it is to the other states.
I wanted to follow up on your answers that you gave in response to Krishn's question. Your statements seem to indicate that you have a high level of confidence on the military leadership to answer the Chinese incursion as of now. What about the political and diplomatic leadership of India? The way they have responded? We saw the Prime Minister who gave a statement which was contradicted the next day by the Foreign Ministry as well as the Prime Minister's office. This vacillating, does that augur well for this kind of a crisis?
No, it doesn't.
And if you were in a position in the government right now, what are the 2 or 3 things you would have done differently in the wake of such a border standoff?
Look, firstly, I'm not a diplomat and I don't have the temperament of being a diplomat. So I'm not one of those who can comment on diplomacy. But I can tell you this, that we all hope that things normalize, and normalize by talks. Talks means diplomacy, talks means government's handling and the foreign ministry is handling all this. And I think that is the first thing. As far as I am concerned, I feel that militarily we should be strong, so that nobody can take advantage of us. And while we are strong, I think the other people will think 3 times before doing anything with us. They tried it. They've had their knuckles wrapped. We've had our knuckles wrapped, but they have suffered from us earlier also. We've also suffered from this earlier. And they're not foolish not to know what the strength of the Indian Defense Services are today. And we also are aware what they have. So I think we have to be wary, and they have to be wary of us also. And in the meantime, let the diplomats work on it and let the diplomacy work on it. I can't comment on what the Foreign Office is doing, or I can't comment on the Prime Minister. He must be knowing with his advisors what he's doing. But basically, we should work for peace and prepare for war.
All right, sir. Anju Agnihotri from Jalandhar.
Your government is opposing the APMC ordinance passed by the central government. Isn't the dismantling of the monopoly of the APMCs and allowing private processors and the traders to buy produce directly is in the favor of farmers, sir?
No, we are not saying don't let anything, the farmers buy it. They are still already buying it. Who's buying all my milk? It's the Nestle's in Moga or other plants in Naba and Patiala and all these places. We got plants. Verka's buying it. Your Anand people from Gujarat are coming and they're buying milk from Punjab. So that is not a stop. We've got ITC, which has put up a snack food plant. And then we've had one near Sangrur, which has been put up by Pepsi. So these things are going on. Why we are opposed? In 1966 was going around with a begging bowl, and we had this Americans PL 480 fund available to us, where we went around and begged for food, and they would keep that money and use it for whatever they wanted to use it in India for. The fact was that was humiliating for our country. And Punjab at that stage rose to the occasion. We had the Mexican wheats and we had the Philippines rices. And within 3 years, Punjab had become the bread bowl of India. And we have done it for 60 years. And how has it been done? Because the Punjabi farmer knows that if I grow wheat or if I grow paddy, that will be my end money which I will get. That is the Food Corporation is the agency. And the MSP is the minimum support price which the government supports. And so a person knows that I will get so much money when my crop goes to the market. Trouble is when you lift that. When you lift that, and that is going to, like for instance, when we were having this wheat coming in, some corn came in also. We have this, people grow spring corn. And it came to the mandi in Hoshiarpur. And at that day, the support price was 1,700, but they don't support the price like they do for wheat and paddy or for cotton. Cotton Corporation of India supports the cotton price, and wheat and paddy is supported by the FCI. But and there, if it goes below, they don't let it go below. They keep buying. But here, they give support prices for gram, for dals, for everything, including maize. And what happened? The day it came to the Bihar Mandi during that period, the support price was 1,700 and it went for 600 rupees a quintal. Now that is what we fear. That you may have suddenly they say that this is excess wheat and therefore the prices will crash. It happens all the time. And we say no. We have for 60 years fed the country. And I think this MSP system and this, now this is not a decision which is taken today. This Shanta Kumar Committee report, which was when Shanta Kumarji produced this report years ago. He said, do away with FCI and do away with the MSP system. And that is what they're now implementing. Ordinances will become law soon, and then you're stuck. What happens to my Punjab farmer? What happens to the law and order situation? If a person who's used to getting 2,000 rupees per quintal of wheat suddenly finds he's only getting 1,100, what will he do? He can't feed his people. 70% of my farmers, as I said, are below 5 acres of land. How are they going to feed their families? So we have a lot of problem then. So that is not a fair decision to take. Now you've got the Jamna Ganga basin developing and producing rice. You've got the Narbada basin, the Kaveri basin all producing rice. You've got Madhya Pradesh growing wheat. So Punjab is not of any use to you anymore, or not to that much use to you. So therefore, we are the ones who have to suffer. You forget all about that history of 60 years where we fed the country. Is that fair?
Sir, second question is related to stubble burning. Like Punjab government has already distributed over 50,000 farm equipments to manage the stubble. And this year also they are going to distribute 23,000 more. So this will come to close to 74,000. So sir, do you think that this much of machinery is sufficient to manage 20 million tons of stubble in Punjab?
No, but we do have other plants also come up. For instance, we've got paper which is using this, paper plants. Then we've got power plants. Which are using this, come up near Abohor and Fazilka in that area. It's come, so it is going to be happening. But I hope that the farmer will see through it, because we plow our paddy in. I plow my paddy in. It plow it all right. If you're cutting it, say about the middle end of September, then in 2 months' time it doesn't decompose to that extent. It does decompose eventually, and eventually does add nitrogen and texture to the soil, but that is at a later stage. But during the growing of the wheat crop. So, but last year I think it was the wheat crop which is sown within the paddy without the stubble burning has done very well. And let me tell you, even now we have got 20% of our paddy crop in. By direct drilling. We don't have to go for transplanting because we didn't have the labor. They had all gone off to homes. So this has been done there, and it's doing very well from my information and reports, that the yield produced by this, because when it tillers, that depends on how many heads are formed on top for the grain. And all that which is grown by drilling has given us better tillering than the transplanted plants. So hopefully that will be a good, but that's part of the evolutionary system, necessity being the mother of invention. You know the old story. So it's necessary. Labor was not available. We have developed a method. 20% of Punjab of paddy has come under this, and people are happy with that. So I think these are things you will find that this time there certainly will be an improvement.
So Kamaldeep Barat from Amritsar.
Hello, good evening, sir. Sir, my question is, sir, there was a Dussehra train tragedy around 2 years back, and around 60 people were killed in that. And then we had last year Batala factory blast, in which 23 people were killed. And now we have Huj tragedy, in which 123 people have been killed. In all these three inquiries, you have ordered magistrate probe. But in the first two inquiries, in the Dussehra train tragedy and Batala factory blast, the magistrate probe report was never made public. We don't know what happened in the report and who were the guilty. My first question is, will you make this report, Huj tragedy magistrate probe report, will you make it public? Will you let public read it? And if yes, within how many days you will make it public?
No, I can't give you dates for commissions, but I can tell you this: it's a very important thing for us, and we're going on. You're talking about the Taran and Gujarat and Gurdaspur and Amritsar, that border belt, which has had this huge tragedy. But first, let me start with your Gurdaspur one, the one that took place on Dussehra at the railway crossing. That already the inquiry is in. Already the people have been indicted. That committee included railway people and all into it, and that report is out. Compensation has been paid and jobs are being given to those people. I think it is to be done by the corporation in Amritsar. I think they should be, must have done it by now, otherwise they will be doing it. And the Batala is that one of the fireworks. Was it the firework one you're talking about? Batala Vijay Atishbazi Talisi, was it?
Hanji, I guess so.
I don't know which one he's talking in Batala. Which?
Yeah, that was what.
With fireworks. Firework one is on. And I think by now they must have, I haven't seen the report myself, but it should have been in. Again, that should have been come. But this one is very much in our on our horizon, and we are very much on it. But let me tell you what the reasons are. People keep thinking that there's a big mafia here. And all. Do you know how many people, the people who died here? These people are the poorest of the poor. These are the people. What happened in March when we clamped down? All liquor industry was shut. All your L1s and L2s and whatever your liquor trading points were all shut. And people, some of them are used to drinking. So what do? They start making liquor of their own. And either they make the liquor of their own, they double these things, they make it out of gourd and this kikar bark and all that sort of thing. They make it, and that's something which has been going on in Punjab forever and ever. It's one of the systems that it works here. In this case, it was something different. In this case, there was a man from Ludhiana. So far, they're still working on it, and it's all there. But I can tell you general story. There was a stockist from Ludhiana who had bought some methylated spirit, which was required for painting of doors and windows and all that sort of stuff for the paint industry. And somebody came and bought from him and took it to Moga. And Moga used that to make liquor. And that was the liquor that killed all these people in that area. So we caught them all. Everyone's been arrested. And
Sir, sorry, just when we are talking, your Congress Tarantaran Congress party president Manjeet Singh Kaseetpur, he has just resigned from his position. He has said that he has no right to remain in the party of the leaders which are directly involved in hooch tragedy and liquor trade. So there are questions from within your party. Tarantaran District Congress President, he has just resigned on the issue. So don't you really think that?
About an hour back, let him tell us who is it. Let him give me the names of all the people who's involved in. You know what the whole situation there is. How there are videos going around showing how that liquor is being made, and it's on the sides of the rivers or within their fields. They put them underground and they make their own liquor on that sort of thing. But this one in Tarantaran is not that local booze tragedy. This is somebody who has manufactured it in Moga, and he's manufactured it, and from there it has been distributed. It's only in the Majha belt, Tarantaran, Gurdaspur, and rural Amritsar. That belt it's gone, and we have arrested them all. All are arrested. All will be tried. So how does Kaseetpur resign and blame anybody in his party for it? That is not on, because this we have traced everybody who's involved in this.
So Shubhajit would like to, I think, take you back to China. Sorry, Shubhajit Roy.
Sir, this time I want to take you to Pakistan, because you've been an advocate of the relationship between the two Punjabs, India-Pakistan, in the India-Pakistan context. The Kartarpur corridor, we saw about 45,000 pilgrims sort of use the corridor in 4-5 months. In this kind of a complicated scenario where we have a live China standoff with China, how do you see the Pakistan relationship going forward? Do you find this has complicated the issue and made it tougher, the future of Punjab relationship and India-Pakistan?
Look, I was in my last government, 2002-2007, I was very keen that there should be a close contact between us. And I went to Pakistan twice, and I think the Chief Minister came twice. We had Punjab to Punjab games, and we did whatever we could. We had exchange of students. We had proposed people should go to the Lahore University, and theirs should come to Punjab and Amritsar and all. And children should come, lawyers. We had exchange of lawyers, teachers, everybody we had. And things were going very well. Unfortunately, there is a disconnect between individual contacts and the establishment in Pakistan. I don't think the way the Pakistani establishment goes, they wanted anything to do with Indo-Pak friendship. Because the ISI calls the shots, and the ISI's bread and butter and the defense services bread and butter depends on tension with somebody. Now, if they're friendly with China, the only one they can have some tension with is us. And I think that is what has affected our relationship over these years. And now the ISI is very strong. Look at what they've done. They're doing in Kashmir. Every day my boys are dying. You know, I pay every day for every boy who dies. And I give him a job to his sister or brother or son or somebody here. And I'm getting it every second or third day. I'm getting one of my Punjab boys being killed. Now that is happening on the borders. And that's been happening ever since. Ever since I joined the army in 1963, there was firing going on the border. So there's never, I don't think there's a day that there's no firing going on. But that is one side, that's the military. And the military's survival and their relevance is only if they continue to do something with India. There's nothing else. Now, currently, if you think they have come closer to China, we all know that. They have got this Karakoram highway down. They've got this economic belt, which they've now trying to foster. They've given the Chinese naval support. There's the whole thing. The highway is a very strategically placed highway. It comes down from the Kunjareb Pass, comes to Islamabad, and goes all along the Punjab border till it reaches the north of Karachi, then turns right towards this place. Now, what does that mean? That means that it's a sort of a defensive line also, which they have created. There are two divisions of SSGs, which they have raised recently to just protect, look after that highway, and see that all is well. So, because for them it's strategically necessary. Suppose they are blockaded in the Indian Ocean, then they have an open road from the north coming in. So these are things that's necessary for them. I don't think Pakistan and India will ever be in a friendship stage, because now their interests are very much with China. And China, whenever there will be if we have any operation with China, you can mark my words, it will be a collusive war, with Pakistan also being involved in it. Because they've got too much there. I'm told you go to Pakistan, to any of the major towns, you'll find every second house or third house full of a Chinese chap. I don't know what commerce they're doing there and what else they're doing there. That I'm sure our own intelligence people will know. But so many Chinese people sitting there, and so much Chinese economic and industrial interest, and also naval interest, they will definitely work together in any operation. If we have it with Pakistan, China will intercede. If we have something with China, Pakistan will intercede. That's what we have to be prepared for.
Yes, sir. So, since they said China is sitting very close to, is in Depsang, and there is this worry that, come October, it will come right up to DBO and it will cut off Siachen from India.
Siachen, they cannot cut off from India, because we are in a different way. But let's say if they come, firstly, let's see what is the difference. The distance between the Shaksgam Valley, which Pakistan has conveniently given to China, which belongs to us and which is in the UN at the moment, that one to let's say Daulat Beg Oldi, DBO, it's about 140 miles. But the distance from the Karakoram Pass, which is held by Pakistan, and left area of the country, left of the area is all Pakistan's, right of it, east of it, let's put it, till DBO is only 12 kilometers. 12 kilometers distance. And then after that comes the Aksai Chin. So this is the one corridor that you have into Tibet, which they will certainly attempt something. And therefore we are prepared for that. That is there if they do something like that to come there. What is Galwan action for? It was to interdict the only Shiok DBO road. It's a road of about 200 kilometers, which they would have cut the road. And that is why we are prepared for that also. You've got the Sasilla Pass coming over, another road coming over the Sasilla Pass. So I don't think it's going to be that easy. The Chinese can think big and think anything with it. They are thinking big, because their entire policy is that laid out by Mao and built on Mao's policy, Mao's thoughts, and Mao's, the great helmsman is controlling their whole policy even today, though he's dead and gone a long time ago. But they are becoming harder. The current Chinese Prime Minister, the president, he's a hardliner. And he's one of the old guard who's come through. His father was also in this whole movement. So all these chaps are something that we have to watch out for. But it's not going to be easy, as I told you. Now look at DBO last time. Who was actually holding DBO? One section of 14 men of 14 Jack, Jammu and Kashmir rifles, under a chap called Subedar Stobdon. And they were surrounded by the Chinese, and eventually they were swamped, 14 men. Similar was the case at which I told you at Hot Springs. Before the 5 Jats went in and they were flown in by chopper, there was a Subedar of the Gurkhas who'd been there sitting there for 3 months surrounded by the Chinese. Subedar with about 20-25 men under his control. Those are those little pockets of the old forward policy which was that time in vogue. But now it's not that. You have artillery regiments, you have armor regiments, you have infantry corps there. I mean, you have corps troops. It's a massive setup which India has. So if they think they can just come in and walk in and we are going to say, you're welcome, that's not going to happen.